everybody. Welcome back to Five for Family. So glad that you're joining us again this week. Just a refresher, it's 5 minutes approximately of Bible story, 5 minutes of question and answer, and 5 minutes of activity. So this week, our special guest is someone that everyone knows well because everyone that enters or exits children's ministry comes past her. She loves our kids and helps lead the check-in and check-out process, keeping everybody safe. So, Miss Rhonda, on to our story.
God to the rescue. Moses and the great escape from Egypt. From Exodus 3 through 13. Joseph and his brothers grew old and died, but their children's children, that's their grandchildren, stayed on in Egypt, where they became a very large family. Later on, a new king began to rule, but this Pharaoh didn't remember Joseph, and he didn't like God's people. He made them into slaves and beat them and made them work harder and harder. God's people cried out to God to rescue them, and God heard them. He remembered his promise to Abraham. He would look after his people. He would find a way to set them free. One day, Moses was looking after sheep when something caught his eye. A bush was behaving very oddly. It was flickering with flames, but its leaves weren't burning up. He took a closer look. "Moses!" boomed a big voice. Moses leaped back. The bush was talking to him. "I have heard my people's cries," God said. "I have seen their tears, so I have come down to rescue them. Go to Pharaoh and tell him to let my people go." Moses was afraid, but God said, "I will be with you." So Moses went to Pharaoh. "Pharaoh," Moses began, God, said Pharaoh, "never heard of him." Moses kept going. "God says, let his people go free." "Why should I?" Pharaoh said. "I don't want to. I won't." So he didn't. So God gave Pharaoh 10 warnings called plagues. First, God turned the river Nile into blood. No one could drink the water, but still Pharaoh would not let them go. So God made frogs come hopping and leaping and jumping. In your bed frogs, in your hair frogs, in your soup frogs, all over everywhere frogs. "Make them go away," Pharaoh screamed. "Then your people can go." So God made the frogs go away. But Pharaoh changed his mind. "You can't go," he said. Then God sent zillions of gnats, but still Pharaoh said no. So then God sent swarms of flies buzzing in your eyes, flies. And after that, sickness and horrible boils, huge hailstones, and a storm of locusts. Then darkness when it should have been day, until it seemed that the whole world, creation and everything was coming undone, falling back into darkness and emptiness and nothingness. But each time Pharaoh said, "Make them stop, and then I'll let them go." And each time when God made them stop, Pharaoh changed his mind and said, "Actually, no, you can't go." Finally, Moses warned Pharaoh, "Obey God, or he will have to send the worst thing of all." Pharaoh just laughed. So God said, "The oldest boy in each family of Egypt must die, but my people will be safe." God told his people to take their best lamb and kill it, and to put some of its blood over their front door. "When God passes over your house," Moses explained, "God will see the blood and know that the lamb died instead of you." That night, it was just as God said. Suddenly, piercing the darkness, echoing down the corridors of the palace, came a blood-curdling scream. Pharaoh's oldest son had died. At last, Pharaoh did what God said. "Get out!" Pharaoh screamed. "Just go!" And so, that very night, Moses and God's people fled out of Egypt and out of slavery. They were free at last. God's people would always remember this great rescue and call it Passover. But an even greater rescue was coming. Many years later, God was going to do it again. He was going to come down once more to rescue his people. But this time, God was going to set them free forever and ever. I hope you enjoyed the story. This is Miss Rhonda. I miss you guys. Be safe, obey your parents, and more importantly, remember to always trust God. See you soon.
Thank you so much, Miss Rhonda. So now we have our question and answer portion, so don't forget to press pause. So your first question, how many plagues were there? Press pause. What did Pharaoh do the first 9 times Moses told him to let God's people go? Press pause. What was the 10th plague? Press pause. What did the people do for Passover? Why was it called Passover? Press pause. So a lot of times we hear about another lamb whose blood was slain. Jesus, he died for us on the cross. So in this story, we hear that God is going to rescue us forever. That lamb who was slain is our Savior. How does it make you feel to know that God kept his promise from all the way back when the slaves were in Egypt? Press pause. All right, so our activities tonight, strange as they may be, we're going to use some of the 10 plagues. So for the frogs, you're going to have a hopping competition. See who can hop the longest. For all the winged things that came down, you're going to flap and see who can flap the longest. These are bragging rights, people. We're going for bragging rights here. Also, with the hail that fell, we're going to have a snowball fight. So find a pair of socks, or several pairs of socks, and, a little reenactment time. Just have some fun with one another. As always, you can draw it, you can act it out again, you can build it with Legos. That would be one epic Lego construction. So if you do that, please take some pictures. I'd love to see them. But just remember God's faithfulness to his people, that he kept his promise by giving his own son to die on the cross for our sins, and that we saw it all the way back in Egypt when they passed over because of the lamb's blood that was on the doorpost. Love you guys, praying that God is just keeping you and blowing your mind with his faithfulness. Look forward to seeing you soon. Bye.